What's happening, dogs? Mr. Allen here. We're about to solve this quadratic equation by graphing. Now, before I graph this thing, I'm just going to go ahead and write it in function notation because I'm a snooty math man. And now I feel like it's okay to graph this thing because it's written in that function notation, right? Does it really matter a whole lot? But I'm going to do it. All right. So if I'm going to graph this thing and see where it equals 0, meaning where my y value is 0, or in other words, my x-intercepts, where it crosses the x-axis, why don't I go ahead and start with the vertex? So for my vertex is going to be -2, 6, right? It's the opposite of what we see inside the parentheses there, and then it is what it is for that plus 6. So -2, 6, which would be right up here. Now, what other points could I do? I could start plugging in some x values and kind of just guessing. How about maybe my y-intercept? I know this thing's going to be opening downward, right? Because of the negative that's out in front. But let's plug in 0 for x because that's an easy value to work with. I don't have to always go -2, -1, 0, 1, so on and so forth. So if I plug in 0, I'm going to get 2 squared is 4. Then you make that negative, right? So we have negative and then 0 plus 2 squared plus 6. So 2 squared is 4, then it's negative. That's -4 plus 6 is +2. So I'm going to have 0, 2. And I know that I can reflect that over my axis of symmetry, which is that bad boy right there. And I'm going to get that point there. Okay, so we're getting closer to our x-axis, but we're not quite there. So the -1 and the -3x values would really not help us here, right? Because they're just going to be above. So let's go another one to the right. Let's plug in +1 here. So if I were to plug in +1, I'm going to have 1 plus 2 squared plus 6. So that's going to be 3 squared is 9, but it's negative then because of that negative out in front. So -9 plus 6 is going to be -3. So then I'm all the way down here. Interesting. Whoops, too far over. All the way down there, which would mean that I'm also all the way down here. So that means if I look at this graph and I were to actually graph it there, that means I'm crossing somewhere here and right here. Those are my x values that I'm looking for. Now, there are ways to do this using algebra, but we're in the graphing phase right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop up my TI-84 Plus graphing calculator because, you know, I'm always strapped, baby. I'm always strapped with this thing. No matter where I go, I got my TI-84 in case that math comes at me. So let's go and plug this thing into my y equals, right? So you got to hit that y equals up top left there, and then I can go ahead and plug this quadratic equation in. So let's see here. We have negative and then parentheses, and make sure you hit that negative button, not the subtraction button, right? And then we have x plus 2, so plus 2, quantity squared, and then I have plus 6. Hit enter, and then actually we don't even need to hit enter, we can just hit graph, right? And if your window does not look like this, you can hit zoom, okay? You can hit zoom right there in the middle, and then you can choose the 6th option there, which is zoom standard, okay? And that'll put you in that 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 window. All right, so now I can see kind of like what we had for our graph when we graphed it by hand, that we're crossing somewhere between, it looks like -4 and -5, and somewhere between 0 and 1. So how are we going to figure these out? Well, we can hit second and then trace, which gives us the calculate option. What am I looking for? I'm looking for my zeros. So I hit enter on that one. And now I have my left bound. Well, it looks like I'm closest to this guy right here, so I'll hit enter. I'm to the left of the one that I want. And then I'm going to arrow to the right to get my right bound, so I'm going to need to be below it and hit enter. And notice there's 2 arrows up top that are pointing towards each other. They're pointing towards that 0. We're saying that it's somewhere between these two. You're giving your calculator a range of numbers to guess from, okay? Because it's just approximating it. Now I'm going to get 0.4494, so 0.45 roughly for this one. So we get x equals 0.45. That's one of my values. Now let's go ahead and get the other one. It's going to be the same type of process. Hit second, then calc. Then we're going to arrow down to 0. Hit enter. And this time for my left bound, I'm going to need to be below, right, that x-axis because that's getting to the left side of it. And then I'm going to go to the right, which would be above it, if it will ever get there. Sometimes the emulators run a little bit slow here. Almost, there we go. We're above it. All right, beautiful. So I got my arrows pointing in towards each other, pointing towards that x-intercept that I want. I'm going to hit enter to guess, and I've got -4.4 449, so negative 4.45. Okay. X equals negative 4.45. There we go. There's my two solutions. We solved by graphing. We did need to use our calculator for this one. There are ways to do it algebraically with like square roots, fooling it out using quadratic formula, all sorts of things. But this one was focused around graphing. Hope you guys liked it. I hope you were strapped with your TI-84 Plus and that it was charged or had those AAAs in that bad boy so you could use it. All right, see you guys later. Deuces.